To all who come to this ragged place, welcome. And since you're here, why don't we start the show? Today we've got Ian J. MacMillan, Tailor, Clothier, suit maker extraordinaire. This guy makes an amazing suit with the London Bespoke Club in Toronto, Ontario. So if ever you're out that way, go get a suit. He makes a really good case for why getting a bespoke tailored suit might be a better experience and might be worth the tiny bit of extra money that you're going to pay for it. He definitely sold me on it, and I think he might sell you on it too. But he also makes a case for making an outhouse, because he's done that, built an outhouse by hand. This is the thing when you talk to people. You have the opportunity to find out that they are multifaceted individuals. And it's not just the one thing you see on Instagram or on social media. They do a lot of stuff. I found out that Ian is a thoughtful, intelligent individual who takes a methodical, holistic approach to making and crafting things, suits, but many things. And I was really, really excited to talk to him. It was a great conversation. I hope that you enjoy it. And remember, this is the Ragged World. It's an adult conversation. So your virgin ears may hear something you didn't expect, so don't let that throw you. That's all you need to know to get into this podcast. Without further ado, Ian J. MacMillan, Ragged World, let's go. So, okay, I got to tell you, I'm super excited to have this conversation. Particularly because, okay, one, like I said, you're looking great. Thank you for being here. Ian, Rick, nice to meet you. Finally, for the very first time. Yeah. I have a bunch of questions. After you said you were going to be on the show, I just looked through your Instagram. I looked through the stuff that you posted, and I started getting excited because the spine of this podcast is really beauty, battle, and business, and how those things interact together. Beauty particularly. I feel like it's a search that a lot of people go on. Like maybe you'll go into nature because you want to see beauty. Maybe you're going to look at some Instagram photos because you want to see something that looks good. When it comes to, I think, men and the way that men look, at least aesthetically beautiful, if you want to put in that way, handsome or good looking, whatever you want to put it, the suit is the kind of the be all end all. Maybe a military uniform is another way to like look, increase your external looks, but the suit is probably the most powerful way that you can change the way you look. And so that's why I started getting excited about you being on the show, because essentially you craft these things by hand. You're with the London Bespoke Club, I believe. Mm-hmm. Yep. And you're a clothier, and I know very little about this profession. So this is awesome that you're here. So thanks. And I guess to start out, how did you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got on this road?
So this has really been my one and only profession my entire life. So I started off in, I guess, the haberdashery world at 17, and I've been doing this for more than half of my life. So it was a slow burn. You start selling clothes, and then we had an in-house tailor, and an extremely good and ultra fast tailor from the United States, because I grew up in Windsor, Ontario. So just asking him, can you show me some things on how to use the machines? And truth be told, most tailors, if you approach them, won't show you anything, because at the end of the day, it's a manufacturing job, and sometimes people just don't want to do it. You actually do have to physically do stuff, right? But then I wore him down, and then he showed me how to use blind hems and the regular machine, yada, yada, yada. And then I moved on to a couple other businesses. I dabbled in fashion design, and I withdrew from that. When I first moved to Toronto, I just knocked on a door, and I did about a 5.5 year apprenticeship for coat making specifically. Because usually when you knock on when you choose where you're going to be put, you don't just start off just by, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but anyways, this is the timeline.
Yeah, all right. No problem.
Did the 5.5 years, went out on my own for about 3 years, 2.5 years, 3 years, and then COVID hit. And then, the world was sort of turned on its head. But I had been doing alterations for the London Bespoke Club for years and years and years. So basically when uh, I think one time when he was dropping off alterations, my boss, he was like, "Do you just want to come work for the shop?" And I was like, "Yes, let's go do that."
Okay. So this is the thing you've been interested in the whole time then. And like pretty much your whole life. That's interesting. It's not everybody who knows that this is the kind of thing they want to be in. You said that you withdrew from fashion design. Was there what was the difference? What sort of took you in a different direction? How did you make that choice? Is another way to put it.
Um, I had worked with a tailor during like a co-op, like experiential learning program in high school, and seeing the quality of make. When I say like quality of make, I mean the not just the accuracy of the sewing, but the inherent quality of the final product. So I can make something
Mhm.
that's very, very technically sound, but it's still like the dress shirts have a facing on it. It's very it was very geared towards fast fashion, specifically like if you think in your head, um, I don't even know how to put it, like a lower end H&M kind of thing. Like it
Uh,
was technically done to a certain degree, but the quality and the higher end of it wasn't really there. And I left just because there was knowing what I had practiced before with the tailor, and then going to school for it. There were so few transferable skills, and there was also not a lot of shape to the clothing, specifically like the tailored wear. And I feel like that's something that at least specifically Canada doesn't have a lot of. So
hmm.
uh, I wanted to pursue that farther. And to speak to about like the, knowing what I wanted to do, it's not really about that. It's finding something that is, it's finding a career or something where there's always something more to learn, and what you can perfect. Not perfect, but get as close to perfection as your head.
Of course.
So it still becomes you're ultimately always chasing a dragon. Um, but you have a base set of skills you can constantly improve, and then as either technology increases or improves or innovates the the parts of your business that you're not quite sure about, um, that's what makes it exciting, and that's what keeps you on track. It doesn't feel like 18 years of learning how to make clothes. I just now know a thing, and I'm constantly looking for new and better ways and faster ways to expedite that.
That's fantastic. So, wow. Okay, so this is really interesting because it's. I feel like you've taken the close side out of it in that response. Is that you? And it is a thing that a person can be doing that allows them to improve, and allows them to improve that thing. Also, having that base knowledge allows you to do. Allows you to consistently try to perfect, but then there is a change at all times. So it seemed like the creativity and ability to grow was really what's important here.
Yeah, and you would know this as well as far as making content. You can make quality content that looks like garbage, and you can make shit content that looks great,
Hmm.
right? So you can take the um, you can take that in any way you'd like. Um, but I personally don't think of the clothes that are made as a finished product. If you focus more on like, let's say you're doing anything, you're making ceramic, coffee mugs, and you're throwing clay all day, and you're making these mugs, and you throw them in a kiln and you glaze them, and then someone buys them. Up until that point, that they actually put something like hot liquid in it, the cup doesn't exist, right? The cup doesn't serve a purpose. It is not a functional thing. What it is a placeholder for liquid that can be beautiful,
Hmm.
but until someone actually physically uses it, it's garbage. There's no point of it. Same thing with clothing, right?
Hmm.
If I just we make something for someone and all they do is it just sits in their closet, or they use it out of necessity instead of enjoying it or helping you enjoy something else more. So, for instance, if you're going out with friends and you're going to a nice restaurant and everyone wants to look nice, that helps you enjoy the time more. Are your friends going to ridicule you because you're not wearing a suit? Probably not. And if they do, probably not your friends. Um, but it should help. The product that is made of something of passion should be something that helps your life, either make you money, helps with relationships, or you just personally enjoy. But until you actively use it, it's nothing. There's no such thing as creating until someone enjoys it.
Really? So like that's interesting too, because yeah, well, I am a writer, and I think this is part of the reason why I started this podcast in the first place, was that I do create things, but I haven't always had that view. A lot of times I'm just like, hey, look, I do this because I do this. Like I'm going to write stuff because I have ideas, not necessarily that someone's going to enjoy it. But I have found that if nobody reads it, then is it even, I guess it's a tree falling in the woods kind of situation, right? Like if
Right.
nobody reads it, is it really writing? Did you really write it? I guess, kind of thing. So it sounds like it really matters to you, that somebody gets the benefit out of the suits. So I mean, what are some of the best ways to get benefit out of a suit, in your opinion? Like, what does a suit give you?
Well, there's a modern saying that came into like uh, a lot of usage in the early 2000s, where it was like, a good suit is an investment, and it's not necessarily true. A suit doesn't, or clothes, or nice clothes, or well-fitted clothes, well-made clothes, they don't pay you back dividends until you actually decide that what they're useful for is making yourself feel better or look better. And you can make yourself feel better sometimes by making yourself look better on the outside, but it helps you, especially men, if you get a well-cut suit, helps you more with confidence with romantic partners, helps you with confidence with jobs, applications, or asking for a raise, or and truth be told, people just take you more seriously when you're wearing a jacket and tie. um, but it doesn't really, like, again, it really doesn't pay you back until you apply it to that aspect of your life that you're looking to improve.
Hmm.
But that's also not even a given too, because the 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 lifestyle that people think that wearing a suit comes with is very James Bondish, or whatever. It's like a financial kind of uniform, but it doesn't matter also how well it's tailored, or what you're wearing. If you're constantly fiddling with yourself, then it actually takes it away. You might as well just wear a t-shirt and jeans at that point. It's getting something as high end as you can imagine, but then completely forgetting about it. So
Hmm.
it's almost the idea of like, uh, if you are comfortable all the time, that usually makes you more confident. So like if I go into a situation that I don't like, let's say like a nightclub, I am very, very uncomfortable. And it doesn't matter what I'm wearing, I look very uncomfortable. I don't belong there, kind of thing.
Understand.
So confidence just shoots down anyways. But if you become comfortable in your own clothes, and then you become comfortable in your own skin, you can really just go anywhere and do whatever. Um, but yeah, sorry, I was just rambling. I forgot your initial
No,
question.
no, that's exactly the point, man. This is Ragged World. We ramble. You can go right ahead and go with it, because it leads to some interesting places. Like you talked about comfort, and that leads me to the word. I'm sure people ask you this all the time, so it's like I just want to get it out there right now. The word bespoke, right?
Right.
I think people are like, it's a bespoke this and a bespoke that. I don't even know if a lot of people know what the word really means or entails. I thought about comfort because it's bespoke. My understanding of the word bespoke is that it is like tailored essentially on the spot, or created on the spot without a prefabricated plan, made from materials that the shop essentially has or doesn't go out to buy, in bulk or something to that effect. I'm not really sure if that's true, but it's essentially custom tailored to you. I'm going to ask you, I'm rambling and don't understand this at all. So what is bespoke, and how does that speak to comfort?
Um, so bespoke was taken from two words, to bespoken for. So when you place an order with a tailor, they would set aside that length of cloth, and then that would be your own personal cloth to be made up into a suit later. Um, the majority of the world, when it comes down to like made to measure and some other bespoke um, places, either internationally, some well-named places, it doesn't really matter who and where. They use something called a block pattern, and what a block pattern is the size of a jacket is always gauged by the circumference measure of the chest. And the waist measure is usually smaller than your chest. So the set of patterns that make bespoke jacket, or just any jacket, are what we call graded up and down. So typically we would draft, like if you were going to create a fashion line, you would draft a size 40 jacket, and then you would incrementally add measurements to, the height of the shoulder, the width of the shoulder, length of it, and you would grade it out to accommodate different chest sizes. Some tailors in the world still use their own set of block patterns, so they just have size 36 chest to 52 chest or whatever, every inch in between, and then just stick it on the cloth, trace it with chalk, cut it out, perform a fitting, or rip it and smooth it apart, and then make the changes from there. But creating a pattern from scratch, which is using a system of proportional measurements and proportional formula and what we call direct measures. So the difference between the two would be a circumference measurement has a start and an end, right? It's an Ouroboros, right?
Okay.
So circumference measurements have a start and end in that the start is the end, right? You can't go tighter than that and you can't go looser than that. Something of a direct measure would be if I was to measure the width of my shoulder. It can start at a place, kind of subjective, and it can end at a place that's kind of subjective. Those two things are used more of a check measurement. So if you're drafting it, you go like, oh yeah, I remember I measured that, and I just want to make sure I'm not, it's an inch too long or inch too short, just to make sure that everything kind of is on track. It's good to get in your own head and have those check measurements. But once a bespoke garment the pattern's cut, it is, sorry, I'm on
That's all right.
major road.
We're in real life. It's all right.
So, yeah.
We can't just make art here. We got the car's got to drive. It's fine.
I'm talking here,
Perfect. Yeah. Does this guy know I'm talking? Yeah. So okay. So bespoke. I think
I'll go there and drop them up.
You're certainly blowing my mind. Like I get the impression that you're technical. You seem to be really interested in the technical side of it too, because like you're talking about circumferences, and I started going like, oh my god, I'm being lost in this conversation. But I noticed that too when I saw your account, because I was like, he does not mind going into the technical. And I didn't realize what went into creating a suit in that regard. I saw a post you did where you mentioned something like a cutter, basically a cutter of fabric, needs to know where in space and time points and lines exist. And I was like, okay, what does he mean by that? I suppose I was going to ask you. I'm like, okay, this sounds now like a physics problem. I suppose in a way it is. So what's going on there?
It sounds more complex than it is. So typically, problems like the problems I was referring to are when you draft a pattern. There's construction lines, for example. So if you're taking my jacket, the center back seam on my back panel is the first line you draw, but that line is not straight; it curves in, right? So there's a construction line which is straight. All the depths are given, and then the line is curved in to help the jacket sit into your lower back. But when it comes down to, so for example, like the length of a jacket, I would consider, even though it's a subjective measurement because jackets can be whatever length, I would consider that to be a hardened number, at least until the fitting. Because that kind of stuff, like you can toil over it and you can apply formula to it. Some people have a very specific subjective want for a jacket or length of a jacket, but and then after that, like when you start to really play around with the proportions of stuff, how much of the chest is allocated for the front, how much is allocated for the back, do you stand too far back, do you stand too far forward? The older drafts that cutters start with are they're bizarre because humans aren't, we're all very, very different, and we're all very different in such small, ultra minute ways. Even like how far your neck is. I remember I had a conversation with another cutter in the UK, and I think it lasted about an hour and a half about where your neck is, because if I had a neck that started here, but I had large, trapezius muscles, Well, where will the neck start? Is the neck a tube that is inside of trapezius muscles? Like, is it a cylinder inside of a trapezoid, or does it just become a tilted circle? So
Huh.
going through all these like thought exercises, it helps you again. Um, Solving problems of the body is creating, and like manufacturers know this, like 0 points. So
Wow.
the first 0 point on the body would be right in behind your neck. You can actually feel there's a protrusion of a bone that's at the back of your nape of your neck. So that's what we use to base off the collar, right? How where the collar starts, the height up your neck.
Okay.
But after that, then it becomes virtually no 0 points because, I mean, obviously you can stop the sleeve at your wrist. That's sort of a 0 point, but then it doesn't matter because there's no 0 point for the top. So going through and talking to a couple other people, and also just really, really, really thinking about it in a theoretical way before actually putting paper to pencil to paper. It starts to really warp your mind because then you realize why people haven't done this before in the past, and the new and exciting practical applications of doing this today. If we can reduce the amount of changes from cut to first fitting, then you end up with a more, I would say, holistic finished product in my eyes, because there's no compromises. So there's certain things, if you change it too much, it'll affect other things. Like if this suit had a check on it, the checks have to match across the sleeve.
Hmm.
But if I cut down the armhole, now the checks don't match. So if I could find a way to not cut down the armhole or to make that change as minimal as possible, it increases the speed of the making time, and also the fewer changes to the pattern, then the better that everything fits together without compromise. If that makes
Wow.
any sense.
That's like this is kind of amazing. I feel like it sounds like you have some of the fun of making suits then must be that you essentially have an infinite amount of things to think about in terms of how many different types of body styles you're dealing with, and how can you do this so that you consistently can make a quality looking, feeling product, I guess, for better or worse, or suit on any particular person. I mean, this seems like an infinite series of calculations that you could be making. You said you had an hour and a half conversation with somebody about the neck hole. I
Yeah.
mean, this is like, I kind of honestly, like, from my perspective, is almost in a way unheard of. Like, I could see that anybody in their field would do that, but I don't know that people think about it this way when it comes to suits, and I'm not sure why, other than somebody like you who actually works in it. I mean, what else am I missing here when it comes to creating clothing? Is sort of what comes to my mind.
Um, I don't really know how to answer that because it
I
seems
guess
so
not.
open-ended. Because um, I guess it would be like if okay, you can make like the older draft set I learned from. You can make a suit, like a first fitting, like a basted fitting. And what a basted fitting is after the jacket is cut and the canvas is assembled, it is assembled with long loopy basting stitches, just white cotton, easily breakable stitches. And then it's assembled, but not like there's no lining, there's no top collar, there's no facing here, so you just see the canvas on the lapels kind of thing. And then that is put onto a person just to see the balance of it, vertical balance, the horizontal balance. Is it too tight? Is it too loose? Can you sit in the trousers? This kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I really just forgot what I was just
No,
talking about
I
because I was
I
going
noticed
somewhere.
that you were going somewhere with it. If it comes back to you, it comes back to you. But
Okay.
I was gonna say too, though. You mentioned the trousers. I saw a thing. There's two questions I thought of, which are maybe they're good, maybe they're not. But you said keeping. You were talking about seat angle, which is, I guess, the trousers. You said you were talking about that. Like, what is seat angle?
So, I mean, everyone who's listening can actually do this, and it's a very, very practical exercise. So if you take a pair of jeans that you like a lot,
Mhm.
and you you are holding them so the fly is facing away from you, and you fold them together, and you look at the angle of like where the center of your butt would be, the center of your seat. The angle of it is actually quite we call shallow. It's almost completely straight. So there's no scoop at the bottom. Trousers are drafted with um, a straight line across the front, which would be the top of the front waistband. And then depending, certain cutters have a very specific idea of how far up the back should be from the front. So if you were to lay your jeans down, you would see that the back of the waistband is higher than the front, just because there's more area, there's more linear inches to cover on your seat than there is your front. The length of that line, if I was to keep it square, let's say I'll give an average, like I'll say that's 6 inches, and I'm going to square across here. The longer that angle becomes, and I go along this x-axis, the longer this distance becomes. So if you have a rounder seat, instead of making the seat angle higher, you would make it out more, because I want to put more fullness on the sides of your seat instead of just in the right in the center. So moving that out, this is where I'm talking about as far as like where things exist in time and space. So if I draft, if I know that the seat is the distance between my palms and the waist is the difference between my fingertips, what happens if I do this? Everything stays the same. It is essentially the same measurement, but it drastically changes the shape of the garment and why. And the why is the most important part. And it leads people to doing some I do a lot of I use for example, like I cut a pair of trousers just to test this theory to see if it actually worked, and unfortunately it didn't, and I think I know why. But to try to get the seat angle, I use a clinometer that's on my phone, so just to get an actual raw angle.
Okay.
That doesn't actually change much though, because depending on what we call suppression, so how small the waist is compared to the hips, that must be a factor in contributing to the seat angle, because it can be over or under a certain amount. And in an ideal world, the seat angle, if I use a clinometer, the seat would have to be equal to the waist. But because it's not, it leads to issues. And those issues may just be whatever the difference is between seat and waist divided by 4, and I would just kick that out. X amount of.
So there's a way to fix it. There's a way that it can get thrown off.
Right.
Oh, man.
Exactly. But it's nice just to sort of like do these thought process, like not just make things faster for yourself, but just so that when you sit down to do something, and this works in any trade or any hobby or anything. If it's a hobby, actually, it's a little bit more expedited too, because you only have a certain amount of time to do your hobby. So if it comes down to, like, let's say you airbrush Civil War, little figurines, or you do model work or something like that, you obviously want to maximize your time to make it as enjoyable as possible in that time that you have for it. So sometimes going faster is going slower. So you'd find ways to be like, oh, if I pre-pour my paint thinner into this thing here, then I can have it readily available. Or if I pre-clean all my airbrushes, then things are just there. If I get an organizer, this kind of stuff. So it's sort of taking a lot of the guesswork out. Or instead of just, going in and painting that car or that airplane, is taking a scrap piece of plastic and trying different finishes on it. And that way, when you actually go to make the real product that you enjoy, you have that constant experience and that constant experimentation to apply to that later on. Then you get a better product. And then it's a weird feedback loop for creators, because you go, it's more of I'm happy that the final product worked out, but I'm more excited that I've solved the problem that didn't need solving, but now I've made it more accurate and efficient. So now I don't have to worry about, it's just one more thing you don't have to think about before you actually make your final product. So it becomes more of an exciting thing. But also it depends on the person making, because some people enjoy the product more than the process more, 50-50, whatever.
It
But
seems like to me that you really enjoy streamlining the process or finding a more efficient way to get something done. It's not just a matter of the end thing for you. It seems like you said, you solve a problem that really nobody necessarily asked, because we could get to the end one way or the other, but hey, was there another way to get there? Could I calculate this a little bit differently? Like, is that accurate to say? Because that's what I'm hearing.
yeah, so like especially like here at the shop, this is a showroom. It's not a there's no I mean I have a very small tailor shop in the back. Um, when someone comes in for an order, I supply the we have a whole cutting department that my boss and I have a lot of sway over, and I mean to the point where I can, if I have something very specific I want, I can actually draft them like a small digital pattern just for certain key points, or I can actually make them a physical paper pattern and have them cut off that. But when someone receives a first fitting here, um, getting that process down. So sometimes if you put a first fitting on someone, sometimes the best laid plans go awry.
Hmm.
And the product isn't cheap, right? The product is not even inexpensive. Um, it's so someone puts something on and they don't immediately love it. Something switches in their brain where they start going, "Oh my God, I've spent all this money, and oh no, what am I going to do?" And
For
it's
sure.
just everything will be fixed, everything can be altered, everything can be changed. I mean, even if something needs to be replaced, like a new sleeve needs to be put on or something like that. I mean, like it gets done. The But the process in which I handle first fittings is number one to appease me. And what I mean by that is when I had measured them and I had given a bunch of numbers, measurements, and then I give the cutting department uh, a set of qualitative things like, are you stooped over? You have, James Caan shoulders, you know, uh, those little things, right? So then they can kind of using some of their formula and some other things too, some short measures, pardon me, some short measures we give them, then they'll make up a first fitting. During the first fitting, I appease myself first. What that means is I solve problems that are technically incorrect. So if you had a big collar gap right here, that gets corrected. That's not a fit related issue. It is a comfort related issue and a performance related issue later on with the coat. But having the collar sit really close to your shirt collar is an absolute must. There's no one I will entertain that will tell me otherwise. It's just something that happens automatically. Then, and this becomes something that really, 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 like you very, very, very much have to learn this as someone who actually makes something for a living, or someone who has to be the how am I going to explain this? If you toil for a very long time on something, and then rubber hits road, and let's say I'm just going to use this business, and someone does a fitting, and they're like, I don't like how the pants fit at all. And I'm like, well, you actually, either you specifically requested this or whatever. It actually just boils down to how comfortable do they feel in the coat and the trousers. If that is not met, then all of your measurements, all of your drafting, all of your, technique now goes out the window, because it is specifically because this is not a business that is like fashion design. I'm not making a product and hoping someone will like it. I'm making a product for someone to like it, specifically one person. And
Mm.
a lot of the introductory and precursor questions are you going to be, for example, sitting all day? Are you going to be standing? Is this something that you want to have, a little bit more structured? Do you sweat a lot? All of these things.
That's
So
actually what
then
I was
I
going to
have
ask you about, is what kind of criteria somebody comes in, what kind of things are you looking for to get to this goal of they're going to be really comfortable in this. So you've already started that essentially, but I'm curious of when somebody comes in, what are you looking at to say, okay, look, this person's going to really enjoy this if I do XYZ? Like, what are some of those things?
So a lot of them are because uh, people put a lot of emphasis on personal style, and I tend to really believe that the people who are the most stylish, or the people who really get it, are typically the people who've taken the most amount of chances very, very early on in their life with either quality of suits or, whatever sort of kind of clothes. You've tried a lot of things out, and once you settle down into your niche, then you just try to really, really, really perfect that and get closer and closer to what you think is what makes you look the best. That tends to be something or someone that's stylish without even really knowing it sometimes.
Hmm.
So I have fallen into a very specific niche how I dress. And when people come and they want to get something made, typically my first question is, do you wear suits very often? If the answer is no, I go, that's great. That's fine. It gives me an idea that I may have to explain some what I would consider um, not very obvious things, but just, I would say very obvious to me, but very, very, rudimentary things like what's the shape of a lapel, and what's a tuxedo, and is this appropriate for that setting and this setting and whatever. So going through all that, I mean, that gives me a good basis on where you're coming from. If it is someone who's well seasoned, who, wears suits to work or whatever, or someone who just enjoys wearing suits, then
I
they'll
like
have a
that
better
they're
idea.
I like that they're well seasoned. Like
Well seasoned.
it's a well seasoned suit wear. Okay, please, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you. Please continue.
No. It's a well seasoned steak.
Yeah.
So yeah, if they come over, like if they come in and they kind of know what they want, and they're like, listen, like sometimes it's actually better if someone comes to you and says, I hate cuffs on pants. I say, great, I'm not going to do that for you then, you know. But if someone's like, do you think I should get cuffs? And I say, well, that's a different question because it's very open ended, and it's not so much of a request as much as it is like asking me, um, pardon me,
Oh,
asking me
bless
like,
you.
what do you think I will like? And I'm like, well, I don't really know because if you
I don't
haven't
know
tried
yet.
them yet, you might love them.
I got it.
It's one of those things where it's like sometimes it's just you have to dive both feet in.
Oh, no doubt. You know, I'm interested too. You said you fall into a particular niche with the way you dress, and tell me about that. What is the niche that you are in terms of your dress?
I like very, very high collars. My collars at the back are about 2 inches high, so they stick out from my coat
Yeah, yeah, it's
pretty
cool.
pretty well. I do like rope shoulders, so shoulders that have a large bump here.
So why?
Um, this is just more militaristic, and also there has been such a shift. There's been such a shift in Canada in the last about 10 years of doing like a really really soft silhouette, a really Italian sort of like almost like a shirt shoulder and coats, very light construction. So then I decided to do the polar opposite of that and start making stuff that was very very regimented and very English. A fully floating canvas, something that's like very rigid, like not heavily padded, but the pads that we use are very stiff. And then also a very, very hard sleeve head that helps keep this shape here.
Hmm.
Um, I do like my lapels quite wide. These are about 4 1/4. I think my next batch will be a bit wider than this.
Oh
And
wow.
then I just do just one button jackets. If you can see that.
Whoa.
So not a
Okay.
two button, just
You
singular
gotta
one.
you gotta tell me about the buttons because I know there could be a bunch of them. Now, why one? Why two? Why three? T- Tell me everything.
Um, Typically, because this is a military garment, right? I
Hmm.
mean, you've seen like the Queen's Guard that have like the doublets that come all the way up to the top,
Yeah, I think I have.
right? So essentially, that is what this is, right? So if I was to close
Oh,
this,
wow. I would not have seen that coming. I get it now. Yeah, absolutely.
so the evolution of the suit is basically instead of you wear your jacket open, but they would cuff the collar down. So the suit is a military garment. It is a military garment through and through. This is
Wow.
different because I have a peak, but if I had a notch, it would essentially be something I could button like all the way to the top. So it just
Whoa.
boils down to how much of your shirt do you want to show. A three button would be quite high, something like that.
Hmm.
Two buttons go a little bit lower. And I just choose one buttons because on a 2-button suit, you would never button the lower button. So I just omit it right out of the bat, you know.
Okay, so you're just saying it's going to save you the trouble of unbuttoning it when you sit down and stuff like that?
No, because you would never
Oh,
unbutton the lower button anyways. So there's just a
oh,
button and a buttonhole that perform no function.
really? Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. Man, you just actually answered the first question or like the premise of my thought process at the beginning, because I was wondering why does it's like a military suit or a suit that essentially makes you look good, and it's like, okay, so the suit actually is a military garment in your mind, and actually, I guess in reality,
Yeah, I mean that's even still like you can see like some of my buttons aren't buttoned,
yeah.
right? So all these are all real working surgeon's cuffs, right? And the reason why they're called surgeon's cuffs is because um, during the Boer War, officers who, I mean, to be a doctor in the military in the British Army, you needed to be an officer. So officers would never remove their coats when they did surgery. So you would just unbutton your sleeve and cuff it up, do your
Wow.
job, wash your hands, unbutton it.
Just to
So
give
the
your
name
arms some
surgeon's
length.
cuffs is still stuck around.
Wow, I was going to ask you about the cuffs too, because I think I saw you on in one of your posts on a like a stationary bike or something to that effect, showing that comfort was really important in terms of a suit, and that you could be on a bike and that kind of thing. And I saw the cuff, and I said, "Wow, those things look amazing." So this is a surgeon's cuff. Uh,
Yeah, but then this one also has a specific addition too, because I actually have what we call a turn back cuff as well. So it's another piece of cloth that's been added because I do have pretty hefty cuffs on my trousers, so I wanted everything to sort of match. This is something more of a of a formal detail. So you'd see this on tuxedos, and this part would be made of like silk or grosgrain, and that'd be silk and et cetera, et cetera.
wow.
But yeah, I do like um, my cloth. Like we do have some cloth, and every tailor shop in the world has cloth like this that's mixed with either a little bit of lycra or spandex, and I mean like 1%, 2%,
Hmm.
and it's only put into the yarns that go horizontally to your body so that it gives you comfort across your back and comfort when you sit. But I never like to rely on that. I like the cutting and the wearing ease that you is built into the garment. I like that to do most of the speaking for me. I mean, I like it to be very much not very like not skin tight. I want to be able to still be able to move a bit in it. But yeah, especially on like a road bike, like you're stretched out. Like your knee is practically at your chest when you're biking.
Yeah, absolutely. So you wanted to make it for sure that you could actually move in a pretty big range compared to what traditionally we think of with a suit.
Hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, I think that just it fell onto people getting their suits like overly tight throughout the years, and um, luckily now we're seeing like a lot of guys wearing like fuller trousers and maybe not skin tight jackets anymore. I mean, I have a lot of room in this one, and it doesn't look like I'm um,
It
um,
still looks fairly fitted, like fairly tight. I would consider it fairly tight just from my eye, but you're saying it's got tons of room. You feel really good in it.
yeah, like this is the reason why you have a floating canvas and something with a bit of shape to it because it helps to put a layer almost more shape. This makes my chest look bigger, right? That's the whole point. Is you're supposed to
Ah,
make yourself look more more muscular, wider shoulders. But when I'm sitting like this, I can still grab a large chunk of this until I button it up. And I can still even feel that this is the distance from here to here. It's still floating a little bit above my body. Um, so it may look tight, but it doesn't. It's almost like it's a TARDIS, right?
wow.
It's huge on the inside. It's a comfortable garment. But I will say this as a caveat is that sometimes people go like, oh, the suits, they're too tight and they don't fit. And it's like, even something that's very, very structured can feel really, really good. Um, is it sweatpants and a t-shirt? No, but
Yeah, it's a suit. It's a
uh,
suit.
yeah,
But fair enough. That's pretty interesting. Man, you actually look bigger, more muscular. Like I'm figuring it out. I'm like, because I'm wondering why do we always look better in a suit? Why is that the case? It's really the main question I guess I have on my mind. You mentioned fabric too. I did see like this one gray suit at the London Bespoke Club. I was taking a look. That was saying, hey, it's summertime. This might be good for weddings. This incredible looking gray suit, and it came. There was a fabric company that you guys worked with that was, I guess, from Italy, and they've been working since 1663 or something to that effect. How does fabric play a role in making suits, and how do you guys choose, your textile companies, that kind of thing? I guess not in so much detail, but I'm curious how fabric plays a role in the suits.
So, I mean, fabric is the well, I will say this though, is that Tailor, the difference in the fashion design world is what this suit is made out of is called um, fabric to them, but to tailors it's cloth. It always is cloth. Um, and even more to that too. Um, that's how I can usually spot people who are like very, very into their trade, is if they use the word cloth. It is such an older word than fabric. Fabric compared to cloth just sounds cheap in my mind. I don't know why.
You're right, though. No,
Um,
I'm with you actually on that right now, because yeah, it is
yeah.
clothes, it is cloth, and fabric seems like some new thing we just invented 5 seconds ago. Now that you say it, like, all right, I'm with you. I'm going to say cloth from now on, even though I'm wearing white t-shirts most of the time. We're doing it, cloth.
Listen, I mean, most of my t-shirts I wear are solid gray, and I have a ton of them, and I just wear, like jeans. That's about it. I mean, when I do go casual, I go very, very casual. When I dress up, I have nothing in between. I have like no yeah, really nothing in between.
Yeah, I noticed you seem to
Um,
have a dichotomy kind of thing going as well, which this is another reason why I like to talk to people, because we can get a one-dimensional view or a two-dimensional view, like this guy's the suit guy or something like that.
right.
Like this is the only thing he does. But I saw, that you built an outhouse at some point in the in and I wanted
That's
to
right.
ask you all about that. Like, well, what's the story with the not to get off the other question? We could talk about I was about to say fabric again. We can talk about cloth later on. Sorry, we could talk about cloth later on. But I was interested in that too. Like, okay, yeah, you wear suits sometimes, but sometimes you're out there building an outhouse. Tell me about that. What's going on? You're interested in the outdoors, I guess. And are you? Why did you need an outhouse? Seems like an off the grid place is maybe involved, or what's going on?
That's right. So, my girlfriend's parents have some uh, property up north, and at the top of the hill. Sorry, it's itchy as hell.
I don't worry about it.
Wintertime, it's so dry.
True.
But at the top of this vale, and it goes down to a valley. There's an area where my girlfriend has a very, very large like trailer that we've been renovating pretty heavily, and this trailer 2.0 is now being renovated pretty heavily too. So it's a lot of ripping stuff out, making new upholstery. We're actually making a couch in there. A lot of different things, like a lot of different processes back and forth. But anyone who's actually went across country on like an RV or has like a standalone kind of trailer knows, don't use the washroom in it because that's fucking disgusting. It will stop if you need to stop, but do not go in the trailer because, and if people don't know this, is that the P traps and the traps, that the one-way valves and trailers, I mean, they're it's not going as far away from your nose as you think it is. So we decided, we're like, we should just build an outhouse, and there's a nice little shady spot about uh, 30 feet or so away, or maybe more. I can't remember. But we just decided like we're just going to build one. So there's been progress on that outhouse too. So we just there had been basically like a horse lean-to, like a three-sided structure for horses. It's blocked off facing west, I think. I don't know if that's right. I can't remember. But that blew down in some in a like a rainstorm or a windstorm, whatever. So we just harvested all the wood and then started building this outhouse. But we made it quite large and quite tall, and everything that we used was basically just recycled wood, because at the very, very middle of the pandemic, their prices for wood it was fucking insane. It was like, for a sheet of plywood, I think it was $100.
Whoa, yeah.
Um, $100 Canadian, so I don't know. But so when it came down to building supplies, it was like we just happened to be renovating this place, and there was another business that left a bunch of plywood here. So I asked if I could pay them for it, and they said, just as long as you take it away. But even like all the tin shingles are recycled. The base of it is actually just an old window frame for a barn. Um, and then we just painted the entire interior white. And then we've this year we're going to be putting a chandelier in it and a like a hand wash station.
Wow. So man, it seems
So we
like
actually we made it big enough so we can actually just like switch out a container of gray water and container of fresh water, pump sink, um, a light up chandelier, and like maybe like some fancier sort of like stuff on door
wow.
pulls and that kind of stuff.
So there, it
But
seems
it's fun to
like
work with your hands though because I feel like if people do one thing, essentially it's essentially if you if you know how to use a paintbrush and you can or like a staple gun or whatever tool you can imagine, if you do electrical, it's like sometimes it's fun to learn how to use other tools, and by learning how to use other tools you can make new things. And um, my girlfriend happens to be a landscape designer and a landscaper, so she actually does the work. So she plans it and executes it and
huh.
measures it and does the drawings, then actually does the actual physical labor for it. So it's fun because we both have that sort of that mind where we can build stuff in our heads before we actually hit the road, like hit the ground running and actually start it. And we built that outhouse, that whole structure without any single plan, which was to it was difficult at times because we both had a clear idea of how to do something in our heads, and then when you approach it and then we start talking about it, I'm like, that doesn't, and she'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. And I'd say, well, that doesn't make any sense either. Then it would just be back and forth until we would figure it out. But basically it would just be a series of, you go over there and draw what you think, and I'll go in here and I'll draw what I think, and then we'll compare them.
No doubt. It seems like you both had an
Because
imagined idea in your head that was like perfectly
exactly.
clear and this is gonna work. And then
Yep.
it's like, okay, let's look at our drafts. So how did it work out?
It worked out fine. I mean, like there was uh because there's a million ways of doing like a structure, and there's quicker ways and there's not quicker ways. And I had thought about something that was going to take too long, and she was like, "Don't bother because it's going to be hidden and it's going to be painted or whatever. It's going to be covered up with another material. Don't stress about it, that kind of stuff." So, anyways, but yeah, it all came out pretty well in the end. Yeah.
It sounds like you had the Michelangelo, a god will see it kind of method in your mind. They were like, oh no, we're going to do this. It's going to look perfect. This is the best way to go. And she was like, hey, look, that's all covered. We don't have to do
No, no, no.
this.
I mean, like nothing like that though. I mean, I fuck up all the time, and I have stupid ideas. Don't get that wrong. Like um, it's one of those things where I think because I don't think about it until I actually start to, especially that project too, because it was more of a fun sort of side project kind of thing. I mean, it would get done eventually. It didn't have to be perfect, and I think it was just like opposing opinions about like how something should be done. But that's good though because nothing would be worse than one person saying this is how it should be done, and then the person going okay,
No,
and
you're
then
right.
essentially it's just only one person building a thing with a helper instead of two people building something.
It's true. I mean, that's how we work out a lot of bad ideas as well, or how we can fix a lot of problems. I mean, problems don't get caught that way with a bunch of like, let's say, yes men around. Essentially, what if you did make a mistake? You said we all have stupid ideas from time to time, or are thinking about it backwards. Particularly building something, I think you can imagine it one way, and it doesn't really. It may not be the best way. It's great to have someone say, "Hey, what if we did it this way?" And they can take some sort of ownership of what's going on. So I think I understand where you're coming from with that.
And also, it makes things a bit tougher too when it's like it's like 30, 32, 33 degrees Celsius in the middle of the summer, and it's just I'm just dying. I'm drinking like a gallon of water every 2 hours kind of thing. And it's like one of those things where because there's so much outside stimuli that it starts to seep into your brain and like affect what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then that could be a dangerous thing too. Like if you start letting that affect you and not being like, okay, I have to stop and like relax for a bit, is that you'll start making irrational mistakes, shit that you would never ever do
Mm.
otherwise too.
Yeah, it's getting tired, getting hot, getting hungry, thirsty, whatever. It can affect you.
Yeah.
I was thinking about something you said earlier about tools and using different tools. and how I'm not sure if I'm interpreting this the right way or not, but the way that I thought about it was like if you start using some different tools that you're less familiar with, even though your work or your normal job is something that you use specific tools with, you might actually become better with those tools, or you're starting to get better from this one area now can improve a different area. And that makes me wonder something about I saw a post where you're playing the bagpipes for Remembrance Day, which I thought was
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
pretty awesome. I was kind of moved by it as well because when I hear the bagpipes and think about military, it does sort of get to you because it's a heavy topic. But how does playing the bagpipes factor in here?
Um, well, I mean, I haven't had a lot of time to play them recently. But I learned when I was about 12, 13, 14, 15. Um, and then I've been playing them ever since. And I've been in, when I was 16, I went out to the East Coast to the 78 Highlanders and played with them. I played with the Windsor Police Pipe Band, Essex Kent Scottish Pipe Band. Um, so that was a more of a military pipe band kind of thing. We know the feather bonnets and the doublets and the plate and,
Yeah,
a lot of pounds of wool. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's exactly the same thing. Learning an instrument is being very, very, very stubborn about wanting to learn that instrument, and then it's same thing like learning anything like a craft is. This is going to sound like shit for a while until it just doesn't, until it clicks. And same thing, it's like the first things I ever sewed together were, obviously and expectedly garbage. Um,
yeah.
because they're not meant to be good. And I tell you this too, is that sometimes I think that actually works out for the better, is that if the first things that you start doing are so dog shit, but you love doing it still, I think you'll be a more successful maker, because if you're just very good right off the bat, the depth of need to find new skills and to refine skills is so low.
I've noticed that with a in different in different areas. I'd say like I've been practicing Japanese for a while, and I've said this before. I'm sucking at it still to this point, but I do work at it pretty hard, and I notice that every time something is difficult to remember in Japanese or a difficult concept, that's the thing I remember more. The really easy concepts, it's like, oh, I got this word and I remember it, I got it right away. I was getting the concept. Down the road, I'll have forgotten that one sooner because I just haven't put the work into remembering it. So I assume if you didn't make all these mistakes, or if, I don't know if that's the way to put it, but if you weren't bad to begin with and then had this passion to learn, I feel like you would probably not have to put that work in that's really going to put those grooves in your brain in remembering it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, it's suffering, right? It's but it's good because like the joy that you have of making something and learning a craft, it's like that washes over that suffering. And then I mean, looking back, I was like, oh, I don't remember suffering at all. I had a great time when I was learning, music and when I was doing it. But like actually thinking of specific situations, I'm like, well, yeah, that was a really terrible time. I had like, I remember getting ultra frustrated and feeling like shit for a very, very long time about like how my brain couldn't get it. And you need to calm yourself and get back to it. And then eventually things start to sound really good. And if you stay on that track, you become exponentially better. It's the same thing with like practice makes not
Improvement.
perfect. Improvement, yeah.
I
You
like to
just
say
get
practice
better.
makes improvement. Yeah.
Yeah, it's honestly it's just time in it. Like when uh, I teach people actually like over like how to cut suits, right? Like how to cut garments over the internet, like using a series of webcams and a drafting table and shit.
Wow. Okay.
I
Well,
think this
where do you do that?
just in the back here.
Oh no, but I mean, like, it's over the internet. So is it just a class, or where can people go to find that if they wanted to learn from you?
Oh no, it's just a one-to-one kind of teaching thing.
Oh, okay, I got you. So people who are just interested, you kind of do that kind of thing. Okay. Well, all right.
But more often than not too, like I'll give people a good system of measurements you need to take, and I'll show them how to apply it onto the paper. But I'm like, this is only specifically, this would be like the model of how to do it, but applying it to a different person, like applying it to people that you know or your customers that you might have is going to be, it's going to look different, and it'll shake you up a bit because it's not exactly what you remember doing. And it's a hard concept to grasp, because when like I tell people when they started, I'm like, doing this course and watching me do it doesn't help you ultimately, because you actually need to do it, because there's a few people in the city that are like, well, I'm a tailor. I'm like, well, show me some of the stuff you've drafted. And they go, no, I can do it. I just don't do it. Like, what do you mean you
Well,
just
that's
don't
not
do it?
real then.
It's like I'm as good of a singer, or like I can drive a car better than Hamilton. I just don't do it though. But that's the
I can
same
do that,
thing,
but I
right?
don't want to.
Isn't that qualifications though? Just saying that you can do something and not doing it. But
That's
I was
almost
like,
like
to get
saying
better at this.
I know something, but yet I never apply it into my life. Like that's like a philosophy or even that kind of thing. Where if you have values, it's like, oh yeah, I know to do the right thing, but I steal a lot. Almost it's in
Right.
in a sense kind of like that. Sorry to interrupt you.
Or it's like when you just mentioned that you're learning Japanese. I'm like, well, Rick, do you know I speak Japanese? I just don't.
I just don't do it. I don't
Then,
talk.
well, you can? And here's the worst thing is that you can't even say anything to that, because it's bullshit. I mean, okay, let's say I did speak Japanese.
Yeah.
Typically, in this interaction, it would be one person being like, "Oh, I also speak Japanese," but you maybe perhaps say that in Japanese, and the person who is learning will either know it or not know it.
That's the
But
way.
for me, just to be like, um, I got a private jet, but I fly coach.
It almost
And
seems like a crazy lie, essentially, like as much
yeah,
of a lie as possible. It's just saying I'm a tailor, I just don't bother with it. What if is it?
yeah.
What is even the point of that? Is that even? How do you even verify any of that?
It's just for people to, yeah, it's just for people to sort of gain clout and that kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
and people are more like, people want to give their money to a craftsperson instead of just um, someone who's just like, I always just nickname people just like tape measure jockeys, right? So no actual practical cutting experience, no idea what the measurements are going to actually go into the pattern. Completely surprised when a product shows up that has been cut and made for someone that the cutter has never seen. Um, that kind of stuff is very, very bizarre. But what was I saying too? Because there's a point earlier about what you said.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay,
Uh,
sorry, I keep taking you off track there, but you
no,
were
no, no,
saying
it's fine.
that
I do this to myself all the time. In fact, a lot of my stories have no
no ending.
beginning or end. It's just the middle.
This is the middle of the story. Now it seems like so that
Right.
means you really are about the process, then, huh? Like
Yeah.
that's got to be it. You're definitely a process guy, like getting it done. And I mean, why do you think it's obvious that this kind of thing matters to you? Quality matters to you. Doing things in the best way possible matters to you. Where do you think that comes from?
Um, I don't know.
It's you been this way.
Yeah, I think it's just I think it's how I'm built. I think it's how I'm hardwired.
Wow. Well,
Um,
thank God for you then. That's exactly the kind of people we need. If I'm going to get a suit made, it's got to be from somebody who actually cares about making it well. And I guess you're saying it's not everybody who feels that way. They're a tailor, but they're really not, kind of thing.
but there's things where I'll like I'll catch problems before they actually happen. So if someone wants a really really fitted bicep, but I know that I'll affect the range of motion. And if range of motion and movement has been like it should be one of those paramount things that you're ordering a suit for. So if someone's like, oh, I really, really do want this tapered, sometimes I'll jump in there and I won't. So sometimes adhering to everyone's wants and needs is not about necessarily doing what they ask. It's I know you'll be happier end product if I do this.
Hmm.
And those kind of those kind of checks and balances are purely because of all the cutting that I've done in my life. And um, uh, knowing how one thing will affect the other. Like if someone wants an ultra tapered sleeve, but they also want a rope shoulder, those two things don't look good together. They need to be fuller and they need to be able to move. So those things I just won't. Uh, it's sort of like on like computer programming where you type something in and hit enter, and then it just go like, oh, there's a conflict, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like you gotta have one or the other, but you can't have both. Um,
Yeah, that happens
and
in
that's like
writing as well. You know, like obviously if you're writing a story, you can't just suddenly go, well, I think the main character should have a limp, and like you didn't write that throughout the rest of the story. It's now like, okay, well, why does he have a limp? Where is this going? How is that going to affect literally every other action that happens within this story? So in a sense, the suit is a story in that way. You're going to change the bicep. Well, now we got to change the shoulder. Now we got to change everything else. I guess you've learned this over the years with experience in doing this for people. And a person who walks in has no indication, no idea of how that will affect them, but they just think that's a thing they want. So how do you end up giving somebody what they need based on what they're kind of saying, but knowing where to draw the line? I guess it's experience, but I'm asking you anyway. How do you get there?
It's experience, and it was like when I first started off, it was just a lot of fucking up stuff. And it was not like necessarily other people's stuff. It was like I would make test fittings for friends and for myself and see how badly they went wrong. Or if someone wanted a really wide lapel, we'd make them really, really deep pocket flaps on their pockets, because everything has to sort of go together. It has to all blend together. If you were to just make wide lapels, that is a very that's like a trademark of someone who is just ticking boxes, right? So you want a lapel, how wide do you want it? Boom. Not thinking holistically about the whole thing. Even my cuffs are actually quite wide to match the kind of theme of this coat. And then, for example, like if you were to take a jacket that you're cutting and regular jacket, and you just embroider like a bunch of dumb crap over there, or you put like something really obnoxious, like something that you zero in at, and people are like, well, it makes it more interesting. I'm like, but it makes it more interesting in a confusing and not needed sort of way, sort of like your character with a limp. And people are like, I gotta really juice up this chapter. Maybe Johnny has a limp now, and now he does, and that's more interesting. Or you could fill it in with whatever you wanted, but it doesn't track. And in fact, it turns people off quicker than a holistically bad garment.
Wow.
Like if you have something that is like a blazing, okay, so whenever you see like a car, like a newer car on the street, and they have a bumper sticker that's like rude or just fucking dumb, and it turns you off from like that whole look of the vehicle. It's like you're like
almost a bumper sticker in general pretty much right. Might do the job. If it doesn't say like California or something because you've been traveling or whatever, that fits in with the car motif, if you will. But if it's almost any bumper sticker, we're almost in trouble. Sorry I interrupted you.
No.
I kind of had to go on a rant on
that. There was like like when you see when you used to see cars that like a decent looking car, like I remember seeing this one car on the highway that like the at a certain speed, like the tiniest spoiler would like come out of the car.
Okay.
But it was like a crossover luxury car, and it had like this little stupid spoiler, and I'm like, that makes me hate it so much. There's no amount of like that car is not going as fast as you think. The ground clearance is this. It's not going to lift off the ground, folks. Why does it have this stupid little mechanical? By the way, it will just break anyways. But this little fin that comes out is probably, I don't know, 6 inch. Just comes out, and I was like, I can only look at that, and I fucking hate it. Even though I know that it took someone like with an engineering degree to do it, and it passed all these focus groups and design groups and practicality groups. I don't know why, but it's like. I don't like that kind of shit. Just turns me off so much.
They needed that tiny bit of downforce. It's important sometimes, not all the time. Just once in a while, they need to be able to hit that button and get that downforce. So it seems like kind of useless things, or things that are I'm going to say tasteless things, seem to give you a bit of a hard time. Can somebody learn taste like that? Because it seems to me like having taste and understanding how things work gracefully isn't necessarily that easy to teach. Do you feel like somebody can learn what is gracious, what is tasteful in that regard? Because what you're saying is things that have bad taste. If you have a suit that's here's this giant lapel for no reason and nothing else fits together, it's tasteless. If you don't know that that's tasteless, are you going to be able to learn that, or is that something?
I think taste works in degrees, right? So the more you zero in about a topic, the more that I think you develop taste for the peripheral of it. So like I would notice someone might be like, oh, I really like that wide lapel. And I'm like, well, if they just widen the pocket flaps and that kind of stuff. Now, I will say this as a caveat. Sometimes people think by criticizing something that makes them a tastemaker. And I'll say this as an example. You show me, I'm just trying to look around for something. You show me something that you make. I just have a boot here. Sorry, here's a boot.
Nice.
So this boot, for all intents and purposes, is a fantastic product, right? Made well, Goodyear welted. But then it takes one person to be like, well, I don't quite like that though. And maybe if you just did this differently, or maybe if you just made this loop bigger. If that is not necessarily a technical issue, like if you can still put your finger in here to pull them up, sometimes people think by criticizing something, it makes them know more, or this is worth less now. So if you're like, well, this is how I would do it, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. And you'll find those people throughout life too, where they can never be satisfied with anything because of whatever. But it's not to say, like, I just gave that car shit, right? I just
Indeed.
Apart, right? But again, too, is like that is something that's personal for me, and I know the difference too. So if someone actually can explain that why they actually have that downforce, I might come around to it, but it's not my taste, and that is something that people really have to get their heads around. Is that it is a personal experience, and there is no such thing as a standard, and I would say there is no such thing as really taste. Like I don't really know. I don't consider myself an elegant dresser. I don't consider myself having. I have opinions in certain ways, but it's more of like when someone who hasn't gone through like the rigmarole of like, let's say, learning how to make something is like, well, I would do it a little different, and I was like, well, just do it then. And they're like, well, no, I don't know how to do it. I'm like, oh, so you're just here to, it's like people with film critics and shit like that. People,
that's the easiest thing. It's the other reason why I talk to creators, particularly people who are creating things. It's the reason I want to talk to people because, again, that's a one-dimensional, maybe two-dimensional thing where it seems like everyone's opinion matters when it comes to making, like, films specifically, right? Or any kind of entertainment. You having an opinion about that entertainment doesn't make you amazingly knowledgeable about movies. Trying to make a movie is almost impossible. Like just to say to start. So like at least you did mention, hey, I know there's an engineer behind that car with the flap. I know that a bunch of they did all this work and they probably had a reason for doing it. But you're saying you personally aren't into having that tiny bit of downforce just for the maybe the payoff is not there for you. I guess I'm kind of repeating back to you what you said, but you mentioned movies and it's like everyone thinks saying something either negative or positive or picking something apart. It's actually way easier to do than actually put something together. I could say, I don't know. I don't think your suit's that great. Like, can I stitch up your suit? I cannot do that. I couldn't it would have to take me 10, 15 years of practice just to do what you've done there. But it takes me 3 seconds to say something negative about it. And I want to show this other side that like, hey, and just because you're a guy who wears suits, does that mean you're an elegant dresser guy and you're only the suit guy? But no, you also made the Outhouse and you also have a trailer and you're also playing the bagpipes. You're a person, so maybe look at what you're doing before you start trashing on people. And I know that's a tirade and a rant. That's kind of my thing. I'm sorry, but that's my thing.
But I used to be.
You got me fired up. You got me fired up.
That's good. I used to be very militant when someone was like, in my in my mid-20s, or someone's like, even like during my apprenticeship, and I'd make something that was, it was an attempt or something like that, and I would do something in like a pocket or whatever, and someone would be like, "Oh, that looks like shit," and I go, "Why don't you go fuck yourself?" And I was just right off the bat like, why don't you go fuck yourself with a rusty spoon kind of thing? Is like, get a fuck away. Like, and I just feel like you have to get the fuck away from me right now. And I would just be like, I would be that kind of person. Now it's just more of, I go, listen, I'd rather just spend most of my mental faculties on, relaxing at the end of the night, and I don't really want to. Like opinions are, like assholes, right? Everyone's got one.
Classic.
And it is far, far, far easier to tear something apart than it is to make something. And people don't realize that though, because especially in today, it's like if you're a critic about something, you can make more, like equal or more money than someone who creates something. Like if you're just a film critic and you're like, well, I didn't like that movie, and I'm like, well, tell me why you didn't like that movie. Was it based on something that you made and couldn't figure out or whatever? Like, oh no, I don't make movies. I'm like, well, then shut the fuck up then.
Mm.
You're this idea that everyone's opinion is equally weighted as the person next to him when it comes down to critiquing creative things is completely fucking false. There is
True.
Everyone is not weighted equally. I have no writing ability, right? I have none, and I can never critique writing because I don't know a fucking thing about it. Um, when it comes down to clothes, I know certain things about it, but I know people who are better skilled than I am, and if they do something that's left of the norm or something I don't know, in my brain, I assume that they're doing it correctly, even though I don't know it. And there's a difference between a critique and something like an appreciation.
Mm.
But again, too, like you said with the film, it's almost an impossible thing to have made. Think of all the gears and cogs and the steps along the way and getting the money and the equipment, editing, production, distribution. It is impossible. Just like it's suits shouldn't be made today. We have to find sheep, steal their coats, weave them. And by the way, too, when we buy cloth, that cloth is technically a finished product. So not only did it take a crazy amount of work to get to a finished product, now we cut apart that finished product to make another finished product.
Wow.
And then like that's why like when you finish something and someone's like, I don't really like that, and it's like, do you understand how much time and effort it's taken to get to just this point? And it may not even be that there's anything wrong with the suit or something like that, or the finished product or the creative product. It's that you just don't subjectively like it. And if you're doing that to people and you're doing that to people, then you are really fucking with people's lives.
I think a lot of times people don't know that. They don't understand that it's hurtful. They don't understand that they're coming from a place of no base, essentially. That's a thing too. I really enjoyed watching a lot of your videos. I saw you have like saying it's almost impossible to make a suit. I watched you take that paper cutout. I guess it's the pattern or whatnot. You have all these lines drawn on it. I see you folding at different places around the knee, around the butt, and using scissors to cut little holes in it. I'm thinking, I don't know at all what he's doing here. Like, I don't know what those what are those holes for? What are all these lines? And it's like he had to do all of this to make this suit, and then the finished product looks amazing. I definitely have more appreciation for it, and I do think it is a little bit rough if you're just gonna look at something and go, yeah, cool, or no, I hate that. That's terrible. That's ugly. This is very lazy thinking. It's maybe not a great mindset. It would be awesome if more people would realize that I think we all have been critical at some point, but it would be great if more people could like listen to what you're saying right now actually and realize, hey, a lot went into this. It's like if a kid brought you their artwork and it's crayons or whatever, even if it's bad, you say, hey, this is great, and you put it on the fridge kind of, because you're not trying to hurt this kid's feeling. But when it's an adult or when it's somebody on the internet, it seems like it's totally fine to just rip them a new asshole. And meanwhile, oh, well, I guess that 200 hours of work was garbage. And that's going to hurt somebody's feelings, even if you're a thick-skinned person, I think, so again, another rant, but is that what you're kind of saying, or?
Yeah, and like there's in my mind, I would say that there's arts and there are crafts that are the finished product is dependent on it being technically perfect. So, and then there's also arts, and there are crafts that are arts. Like the finished product is not based on perfection. So that would be more like abstract painting,
Mm.
experimental photography, and that kind of stuff. That is more easily criticized because there is no basis for it, which is fine. But that also just opens up the door to a perfect like yes or no answer subjectively. Do you like it? Yes or no. You either do or you don't. There's no people who are going to be like, you
Mm.
know. Personally, I would never like. I would never, I would never get a Jackson Pollock esque sort of painting,
Gotcha.
um, because in my opinion, it's not something that I will look at and find detail in because that's just who I am. There are some people who just like it because it is such a striking image, right?
Yeah.
But that's also knowing the difference of why I don't like it makes me okay with it, right? Like if someone's like, I really like Jackson Pollock, I'm like, oh, you must like it because they're huge and it's imposing, right? And it can really, you
It
can feel
strikes them
something
in
off it.
some way,
Yeah. But
but it
like when I
doesn't
see
have
stuff
that
like little,
technical skill kind of behind it.
yeah, like when I see something like that little fin that came out of that car, and I'm like, it's technical, but I wish that the processes behind it were put somewhere into the vehicle that made it more holistic. I don't know if that makes any
Mm.
sense. Um, like it, I don't know. I mean, there's things out there that like I think that people are working on engineering wise and that kind of stuff and detail wise, but I just don't feel like that should be a thing. I don't know why. It's just something that like it's
Mm.
uh
It sounds to me
I
like
look
you
at it and I
want
say
things. Oh, sorry, please.
no, that's something I look at and I think why instead of wow. I'm just like I don't
Makes
whatever.
sense.
That's
It sounds like you like to look at the entire thing as a whole, like you're saying holistically, right? So, and then does this fit into the entire thing? And when I make this one change, how does it change the entire thing? And that's sort of your philosophy of looking at something like that. So, I could see why something that seems like it's been maybe shoehorned in might agitate you a little bit.
yeah, and then with those things too, like any sort of product where let's say if we had like a mid-range sedan and I painted it solid gold, like solid gold paint,
Okay, kind of
and then that
awesome.
increases the value of it. But does it doesn't increase the inherent value of it. It's sort of like there was a story of a tailor that put solid gold buttons onto a double-breasted blazer, and
Hmm.
it doubled the value of the blazer. But that isn't inherent quality though. That is just I can cut those buttons off. It is a fastener, but it's something that's so far removed from uh, integral design and holistic design that it doesn't matter, right? Like it's a nice thing to add on, and eventually, yes, it is a precious metal. It will increase the value of it, but is it intrinsic value? And the answer is no. Um,
Kind of like if somebody
it's
was making food and they put that like gold leaf on the top and say this is a $10,000 spaghetti or something. Now
right.
it doesn't taste better and it doesn't look better and it's not plated better. None of the art is better, and yet
I don't actually think it like a gold leaf tastes like anything, right?
yeah, it's basically a nothing.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
sort
but
of
that's
like
the
that.
same thing. It's like, oh yeah, this is the most expensive burger in the world because we gold plated the thing. It's like that doesn't. Um, I think it's a sad thing when people sort of like try to hunt for that and be like, oh, I just had the world's most expensive burger, knowing that you could just go get gold leaf for yourself and throw it on the barbecue kind of thing. Like you could just do that yourself on your own time. It can, you know.
Mm.
Um, but it's the idea is that it's the most expensive something, and the most expensive something is usually um, it means that it's a better, more well thought out product, or it's just an average product that's been, more marketable and more marketed.
No, for sure.
Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, like I'm a huge, when we do something, especially with something that is built from the ground up, pre pre thinking, like, and you can tell when you look at a product or you look at it like if you read a book and you can tell if someone has uh, very, very much well thought out the entire story in their brain before they've written it versus I wrote 7/8 of a story and I couldn't get the ending and I had to get it to the publisher and I threw it out.
Yeah.
But you can tell by the rhythm of it too, right? Because tone changes, and you just get, you're like, I just fucking wasted, like, so many hours like reading this fucking book. And I get to the end, I'm like, I don't want to fucking finish it because now it feels like a different book. Um, and that's the thing that like people find upsetting, or like, this author, like, or whoever, like, you ruined the ending of my favorite book. And it's like, yeah, because it wasn't written holistically. Like they didn't really know like what they were doing, and they just threw that, that gold leaf onto the burger, and went from there.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense a lot. Oh, you definitely make me think about that too. And I try to think about myself sometimes too. It's like, did I rush the end of some of these? Like it does happen where you're like, okay, I got to shut this thing down. We're at 300 pages or so, and I got to get to this end. But usually, I have thought out where I want to be throughout a story as well. So yeah, it's true. There's a structure, and there is departing from a structure as well. But having no knowledge of what that structure normally is isn't really great. And like you talked about Jackson Pollock versus, like, I've seen the Sistine Chapel, okay, and I could look at a Jackson Pollock, and then I could look at what Michelangelo did in the Sistine Chapel, and I go, like, he's better. That's my kind of take on these kind of things. I could sit here and look at this for 1,000 years. Maybe somebody else can look at the Jackson Pollock thing for 1,000 years as well. And I'm not saying that one's better or not, but to me, technically, you cannot say the Sistine Chapel isn't technically superior to something to that effect. I think that's my thoughts.
Of course, yeah. The chapel is much more technically, and in my opinion too, is much more technically appeasing. And it's, I would say, better. But sometimes, in trying to wrap my head around people who wouldn't think that, it would be like, well, I don't want to look at something that looks too close to reality, and someone who's like looking at art for like an odd escape may not like that. Or like, that looks like a cloud, and that looks like a naked man. You know what I mean? Like when you're looking at the chapel, you're like, boom, it's like those things already exist. If someone wants to see, like, a bunch of, odd colors and shapes and that kind of stuff, that may be something that they're more into. I'm just not, just purely because of how my brain is wired.
You know what, though? I'll say this too. I bring up Japan a lot. When I was in Japan, I was going to this place called Skyview. It's so that you can go on the top of this really tall building and you can look out. You're on a helicopter pad and you can look at the whole city. But also at the top of the place is a museum called the Mori Museum, and it's usually modern art. Or so it'll have a abstract feel to it. However, the type of stuff that was there was like, you had this artist who was a woman who had German furniture that had been in a fire, and she used that and a million strands of a particular type of thread, creating this kind of spider web thing around all of these things. Sometimes it would be red, sometimes it would be black, and there'd be a million of them. And so the technical difficulty in making it was aesthetically pleasing to the eye as well. So this was abstract, but the technical ability was high. So it's not that every single thing that's abstract, I'm not trying to say that is abstract, is not good. This was pretty incredible artwork, actually, but it still kind of required that technical skill on her part. She had to know the kind of threads that aren't going to break constantly. You know what I mean? She needed to know her materials.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, it would be something that's I think it's like, when you looked at that, you couldn't really figure out how she did it at the very beginning.
Yeah, no, I couldn't even imagine where she started.
Exactly. So like, that'd be something that you can look at and think about, and think about only that. And thinking about that will remind you of something else, and whatever. But it's in your mind. Like, I know exactly how a Jackson Pollock was created.
Yeah,
make no mistake. I know exactly how it was created. And
good point.
You know what I mean? Like, you play chess, and then you sort of, you learn openings and you learn closings, and you sort of figure it out. Or, like when you're a kid and you're learning checkers is a better example, because it's solved. Well, I mean, it's solved faster than chess was. But you play checkers and you're waiting for someone to move here so you can boom, 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 king me, whatever. The reason why adults don't really play checkers that much is because the game is solved. Same thing like tic-tac-toe. Once you learn the trick, there's no interest in it anymore for most people. In fact, it's more like you're just going through the rudimentary of just playing the game for the sake of moving your hand. But like, it is a boring game. I mean, chess is infinitesimally more complex, and checkers is not. And I think certain techniques and certain games are stepping stones to more elaborate thinking, and a higher artistic planning mode or plan to get people to become better thinkers and better makers. And it's not to say that, everyone can make at least something. Because we have to, like as kids, we're always doing art, like arts and crafts and this, that, and the other. But I mean, like to truly get good at something takes an incredible amount of time.
No doubt.
But if I can look at something,
please.
if I can look at something and go, forget it. I already know, like I know exactly how that was done. Then it does not do anything for me forever.
Can I ask you this then? What do you think about? I do ask this to people a lot. Generally, there's two questions I ask everybody. One is, what do you consider maturity to be? Because I feel like right now it is a little bit difficult to put it. Like people think about being an adult in a negative way a lot of the times. Like it's great to be young and it sucks to be old, kind of thing. But I don't think that is a great attitude, because you do maybe lose the maturity. It's like the baby in the bathwater. Young at heart, wonderful, but what is to mature then? Because you just talked about people becoming better thinkers and not just necessarily doing some rudimentary kids game, the chess versus checkers kind of thing. How can we kind of upgrade to chess versus checkers in terms of our own maturity? In your opinion, this might be a crazy question and difficult. If you don't have something, that's fine. But I do ask a lot of people this: what is maturity to you?
That's a good question. I mean, I hated my 20s.
Nice.
I'm glad I'm in my 30s. Why did I hate my 20s?
Yeah, that's my question.
I think it was, I think it was just I gave too much of my time away. And that was a result of people who, no, not people. It was a result of me letting people, like they were taking up too much room in my brain. And I think it's weird that when you talk to like the boomer generation and they seem, I mean, obviously like this is a generalization. Please don't come after me.
No, for sure. I got you.
Especially like the older men, and they just seem not ornery, but like, they're just like, they have no time for people. I think that's just a natural progression where you learn lessons from people, and then you tend to block more people out and give them less of a chance. Because for me, maturity looks like just being like maintaining as much inner peace as possible most of the time.
Wow.
And which is just, it's just not like it just, this comes disguised from other people in different ways, where people are like, I don't give a shit. It's like, you must give an ounce of a shit to do this, like to do life. Like, you can't just be like, someone's like, oh, here's my deposit for a suit. I'm like, go fuck yourself. Like, no, you have to give a shit. If someone's paying you to do a job, you have to give a shit about your job. You have to care about something. Or whatever. Even if you fucking hate your job and it pays the bills, and you obviously should care about something. It could be like, not even something you make. It could just be like, I really like stand-up comedy, and it's not something you make, but it's something you enjoy, but you give a shit about something. But it's just being like, I don't know, like, I don't let anyone tell me what to do. It's like, really? You don't let anyone tell you what to do?
Ever.
No one. So when you go through airport security, you're like, fuck you, asshole. I'm not taking off my shoes. No, you let someone tell you what to do. We're social. This is how things go. You have a role in society. That role is responsibility. And it's like, as much as you don't like it, it is what it is. Like you have to fit in. You have to let someone tell you what to do a certain amount of the time for greater good. Like, you can't be the exception to every single rule. But then there are some people that just want to, challenge people on little things or critiques or criticisms and that kind of stuff, where you can't let that get into your brain. And sometimes that comes out to, like, people go play around a golf to get rid of that, or you go play video games or have a beer with your friends or that kind of stuff. But I tend just to, I give myself like a solid minute of bitching if I'm really upset about something. So if someone's giving me a hard time, that's fine. You know, I just unload and I go, all right, that's done now. And then I try not to think about it. And just not thinking about it just makes you happier because you're never ever going to fix it just by thinking about it. You know?
That is true. You know, you don't want to keep feeding that dog. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Man. Okay. Yeah. So for you, it's essentially, you know what I'm hearing? I'm hearing that you want people to accept a certain level of reality. Because if you're the exception to every rule, like you said, there's the reality of you go to the airport, you're not gonna, you know, throw your knife on the ground and be like, look, you're never taking this from me. You know, security's going to shoot you. That's a reality.
No, I'm from Canada, so what they do is they just ask you politely to, you know, would you please return that? Do you have anyone else here you can give that knife to that is not traveling today?
And I'm Canadian too. So don't worry. I got.
Oh, okay, good.
I got you. But no, it's
sorry. If anyone else has been offended, I apologize. I apologize.
The nice Canadian idea. Like, I don't know. Are we? I have a Japanese teacher. She says it seems like her Canadian students are nice. So maybe it's true. I don't know. But I don't know. I feel like we could be pretty ornery, as you used earlier as well. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just.
I do think, you know, that I think that comes from is you know, the thing about like the nice Canadians and like how even like Americans from like the Midwest are pretty like, you know, hospitable and that kind of stuff. And not to overgeneralize, but I think it was one of those things where to survive in harsher climates, I guess like just any harsh climate in general, it's like you needed to rely on like your neighbors and your family a little bit more, right? Because it compounds your life and makes it a little bit more difficult. So, you know, being able to be less mobile and more uncomfortable tends to make you reach out to people who need help and that kind of stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm just, you know.
No, it could be. You know, because you got to be cool. You got to be cool, or else it's like, okay, cool, good. You can go live in the snow, enjoy. You know, and
right.
at some point in history, if you ended up walking around in just the cold by yourself with no resources, you might not make it.
No.
But look, I feel like I didn't ask you how much time you have, and I tend to just ramble and ramble and ramble. So if I'm taking up too much of your time, please tell me.
Well, I should get going pretty soon though, because I just want to. I got to rip apart a jacket pretty soon.
You got to rip apart a jacket. That makes total sense. So yeah, I guess to wrap it up, I will say what I've kind of learned from this is that suits can give you that comfort feeling, might give you confidence. Also, the fact that it looks a bit better and people might take you a little bit more seriously because like, oh, this guy takes himself seriously, gives you confidence. It does feel like confidence is wrapped up into what wearing a suit is, and also the person you choose to make your suit, which obviously should be Ian, right? It should be you, because of how much you care about the technical details and just the process. Seems to be a phenomenal, almost mind-boggling. Like sometimes when you went into the technical areas of it, which I'm sure were nothing for you, was a lot for me. I was like, oh my god, I'm not following. What do I do? Okay, give it to you. I'm going to have confidence in that you understand maybe better than what I want. You understand what to give me when it comes to wearing a suit. So I guess maybe speak to that. If a person's not wearing a suit now or they don't have any suits, what would be your take on, hey, you might want to consider it because why?
Consider a suit or consider like going bespoke?
Yeah, well, going with a bespoke suit specifically, because a regular suit is probably not going to fit you quite right. Like, I mean, I've worn plenty of suits that were not tailored, and like you mentioned, the collar moves around. The I can't lift my arms at all. There's a bunch of things you can't move your legs, sort of. So why a suit? Why a bespoke suit specifically? And you know, hey, I think you're a bit of a salesman when it comes to this too. So why a bespoke suit with you specifically?
Well, I mean, bespoke is a concept. So, you know, this is like the, you know, don't have the pen on me, but it's like, the sell me this pen kind of thing, right?
I got it. Yeah,
The
here.
process is
I
the
got you.
process, and right there. So, I mean, obviously that question's a trick, right? Um, so, I mean, the process looks different for whoever it is. If someone wants something for a wedding, the process will be different for a wedding, because especially if you come in with your fiance, I mean, we have champagne here if you want, to partake and celebrate in. You get input from, a fiance, you get input from your friend, or, what have you. When, the process is and becomes whatever you want it to be. So if you come here in the evening and you want to have a drink and you want to have a rip roaring time and pick up stuff, or just leave it with me or whatever. But I would say the process is different because, number one, you don't waste time shopping unless you actually physically enjoy the ritual of shopping. This is far, far better of a way to spend your money. So the product is not inexpensive, but if you were to spend a Saturday, let's say if you took a Saturday off because you need to shop for a suit for a wedding, and let's say you have a job that pays you, I don't know, X amount of dollars per hour. So there's two possible outcomes: is that you go shopping in like a shopping center, like I'm right next to Eaton Center in Toronto here. So you shop all the way through Eaton Center, and you come up with something that you like about 70% of the product. So you like the cut, you don't really like the color of the cloth, you may not like the texture, and you don't like the features on it. Maybe they got little like thin lapels, or whatever. It has a ticket pocket and you didn't want one. So you made concessions. So not only did you walk out and you paid, let's say, if you paid $1,000 for this suit, something that you only like 70% of, is that a win? Was that a successful trip? Here's the worst case scenario too. Well, let's say that whole process took 4 hours and you lost like 4 hours of work, or 4 hours of family time. Now let's say that you go to a shopping center and you do the same process and you don't find anything. So now you've lost 4 hours of work, or 4 hours of recreation time or family time, and now you have nothing to show for it. If you come here and you go through this process, essentially all the choices and everything just lands in my lap, and it's managed by me, and I see from the first consultation to the finished product. So yes, the product is more expensive, but it is less expensive in the long run, and you lose less time. You'll have to do fittings and that kind of stuff, but that doesn't take too long. And then you get exactly what you want. You pay a bit more money, and there's no concessions. So you get what you want, you spend less time, you spend a little bit more money, but that money that you're going to spend that's past your budget or maybe a bit over your budget, you've already recouped from not, wasting it by throwing a Hail Mary while shopping and seeing if you can get exactly what you want.
So what I'm hearing here is that there's an experience factor. Also that, well, you can't really, like, a person would pay for a vacation, right? You don't expect to get anything but that vacation. The experience of just going to some place to shop is not really fun, especially for a lot of guys. That's a generalization. Maybe some dudes love shopping. I don't love going to a shopping center or something like this in the first place. Second, you usually don't find exactly what you want. That's for sure. If you go to this place, you're actually going to get an experience that maybe you don't have all the time. Getting fitted. Someone is working for you to create something that's really going to work exactly the way you want it to. It's going to be comfortable. You're going to be confident. And you're going to look the best you possibly could. And now you're also the time versus wages. People do forget to do this a lot. Realize that this whole time, hey, if you get paid $50 an hour, that was the $50 an hour you were losing. Or if you get paid whatever you get paid, you lose that every hour, regardless of whether you were going to be at work or not. And then also the time, the priceless family time, the priceless free time that should be worth 10 times this is now gone, and you're now using it in an experience. That's what it sounds like to me. You're using it in an experience that's going to be a positive one in the end. Therefore, it exponentially makes the product worth much more. And you're working with somebody who actually cares about it, whereas at a regular store, they really may not. They really may not. So whatever the reason you're getting the suit, whether it's for a wedding or for a funeral or anything in between, it makes sense to do this if you think about your time and your experience being valuable. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, yeah. And I like this is something I like to tell people too, is that this is something I read I don't know how many years ago, but you know, like how you get older, how time goes quicker,
Yeah.
the perception of time goes quicker, because when you're a child, a year, if you're 10 years old, is a tenth of your life, so it goes by slower
Yeah.
in proportion to the rest of your life. But then there was someone else who had said that the reason why life goes by slower, or sorry, goes by quicker, is because when we're children and adolescents and young adults, we have more novel experiences. So learning how to ride a bike, you know, first kiss, you know, first girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, you know, that kind of thing. Those things are benchmarks in your life that you can remember, and there's more of them, which makes time feel like it's going by slower. So because Bespoke is such a unique experience that maybe a lot of people don't undergo, essentially this is making you younger. So it's making time go by slower. So this is something that will stick out in your mind for years and years to come, rather than just going to buy, you know, socks and underwear, that kind of thing. This is something very, very different. I mean, at least too is like I really, really try to focus on the process, and what the process is strictly just the people behind it. Because without people, there's no bodies to dress, but more than that, there's no good stories, right? I really do think that the majority of people just like a good story, and
Wow.
this is it. I mean, um,
It is a good story to tell.
this
It'd be
is
like, I went and got tailored, completely tailored suit, and you also end up feeling dynamite afterward because you've had this great experience and you're wearing an awesome suit.
right, right. I mean, it's something so left of center that you'll wish you've done it earlier, because it's a bit more expensive, but it doesn't, like, there's tiers of everything. If anything, it's like the perception of Bespoke being incredibly expensive is um, it's not as expensive as you might think.
Might be
So it's one of
slightly
those things that,
misconceived.
yeah, I mean, I mean, I don't go out and spend X amount of dollars in a certain way without doing a bit of research, but it's certainly not something unattainable or ostentatious. You know, it's not something like, you know, like a private jet or something like that. Like it's very, very down to earth as far as pricing goes.
And I assume it's the kind of thing that's going to last quite a while as well, because you did have it hand tailored.
Yeah, and the things that makes things that ultimately, as far as clothing goes, is that, especially tailored goods, is that what makes it last longer is not necessarily getting everything skin tight. So it's quality of cloth, right? Which better made cloth has like a higher abrasion factor to it in certain cases. I'm not talking about like silks or bamboo or anything quite light, but also the ability to have it tailored a bit more loose to your body, or like a little more, you know, not so skin tight, because that's the stuff they'll have to, you know, that's how you'll blow out elbows on your suit faster because it's stretched over an apex. But yeah, I mean, these things too, and I think it's one of those. It's almost like a confirmation bias. So people say like Bespoke suits last so long, but then people tend to take care of their Bespoke suits
Better.
more than regular clothes. So I think it's like that constant cycle of they last longer because someone told you did, and because someone told you that you take care of it more. So
So it's a little bit of both things. Oh,
it's a bit of both.
that's pretty amazing. Look, like I know you got jackets to cut up. I know you have things to do and places to go, and you know, cars to critique. Like, no, I'm
looking at it right now, man.
No, but it's amazing to have you here. And like I said, I've had it over the screen, but it's at Ian J. MacMillan. That's where they can see you on Instagram, the London Bespoke Club, if they want to come in and get a suit. I definitely say everybody go do it. Might be shamelessly plugging. Is there anything you want to go ahead? I want you to be able to sell the thing that you make and be able to do well. So that's where I'm not fooling anybody trying to slip it in, you know, like, just if there's anywhere people can find you or find what the work that you do, where would that be? Where would be the best thing to do?
yeah, so like the Instagram is the best way, and then in my bio, if you click my link tree, it's I'm very, very straight up with everyone. Like if you want to do a free 15-minute like face-to-face kind of Zoom call, I can get a sense of what you want. I can provide you with all the information you want to help to make a decision to come down here, because I do feel like people are now that the world is opening up, as far as like mandates and that kind of stuff, especially for weddings. I still feel like people are still shopping around. So when we talk about it, I'll be like, do you want to sit down and is this something you want to knock out today, or is this something you just want more information about and and shop around and that kind of thing? But yeah, click the link in my bio. You can either just go uh, to the geez, I'm losing my mind, to the londonbespoke.com website and book an appointment with me direct through there. We keep regular hours from about 10 to 6-ish, Monday to Friday. Saturday, we tend to cap it around 3. So there are exceptions to that rule. But just let me know what works for you, and I can see if it works for me, and then we'll plan around it.
Oh, that's awesome. So you can have like a Zoom call with you to just to see where people are at with what they're looking to buy and that kind of thing. You have a consultation. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't it's another step, right? It's another step of familiarity. It's like not just having a telephone conversation. Some people want to see, where they're going to end up if they come here. You know what I mean? Because sometimes people live out of the city and they're like, all right, no, I wish I could come down there, but I'm like, well, why don't we just do a Zoom call so we can kind of get a feel for what you want. And I can. It's great actually having 2 cameras, because I can have an overhead one for like cloths and that kind of stuff and do a picture in picture. So a little kind of like online consultation.
That's so awesome. Man, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciated talking to you. I love this conversation. This is why I do this. 100% why I do this. I want to talk to people who are out there doing it and who think fairly clearly. And there's a lot of people like that. It just doesn't really look that way these days. Sometimes I think there's a particular picture that we're getting of the world and of people, and it's not as accurate. It's often negative. And I love this so it was such a positive conversation. I want to thank you so much for being on the show. It was meaningful to me, and I guess I'm gonna have to think about getting a suit now. So thanks again, man. It's great to meet you. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thanks for having me. I like doing these things, and I don't know, keep in touch on Instagram.
I will. I'll keep in touch. I'll let you know everything about what's going on with this. And also, I'm following you now, so I'll be seeing everything you put out, and I'm looking forward to it.
Cool. I got some other funny video ideas brewing in the old brain.
I did forget about that. Yeah, you had the kind of Skyrim or video game character, the pantsless Zoom, Tailor.
Pantsless Zoom, yeah.
That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I want to do not an even mixture of those, but I want to do one every once in a while that's really stupid.
Well, it's good. Yeah, it's some of them are like highly technical. I'm going, okay, what is canvassing? What is this? And what is canvas prep? And then later on, it's like, oh, I understand video games. So that definitely, it's accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
All right, man. Hey, again, thanks so much. Have an awesome day, and
you too, man.
I'll talk to you again soon, hopefully.